Thank you for joining the Moss-like Consulting team as we facilitate a thoughtful dialogue around conflict resolution. At Moss-like, we specifically develop solutions that meet both the individual and organizational needs of any system. We believe in the power of the human spirit and its capacity to create transformative connection. We are a firm rooted in relationship and built on cultural, educational, psychological, and systems-based problem solving. We realize that humans and the systems they operate in are holistic in nature. We believe that sustainable change is possible through creative and collective observation, thoughtful dialogue, and creative systems-based problem solving. Believe it or not, change is on the horizon. Let's be intentional about what this looks like for us as we take a deep dive into conflict resolution. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be watching this wonderful opportunity to discuss issues related to conflict resolution. I am indeed excited that Shiloh now has engaged with Moss-like Consulting to talk about this issue as we support the people in Damona and support their efforts towards peace, towards healing, and towards complete health. I want to begin our dialogue today by, first of all, letting our team introduce themselves. These are two individuals I've worked with over the years under the umbrella of Moss-like Consulting. And so I'm going to give them the opportunity now to basically describe who they are and bring their presence into this conversation. And we'll start with Ms. Erica Harris.
Well, thank you, Dr. Moss, for including me in this wonderful change that could happen for those who are listening, those who are eager to bring about positive changes in their world and in the lives of others. My name is Erica Harris. I am a 30 plus year veteran of education from the classroom to central office. And now I'm currently serving as my own private consultant agency for adaptive schools, Thinking Collaborative, and as a national staff developer across the nation. And so I'm a grandmother and a mother of two. And I'm excited to be a part of this huge conversation that scares so many people, yet is so necessary in order for us to survive, and not only survive, but thrive.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Mr. King.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Dr. Moss, for having me as well. This is a privilege. I look forward to the conversation. My name is Leroy King. I'm the founder, owner, principal consultant for LK3 Consulting. And our core services is helping employers and their leaders develop a workplace that is diverse, inclusive, but also productive. And so we spend a lot of times in helping leadership develop the skills that will create a space where their employees are engaged, they're motivated, and they're happy to be there. And so, but at the same time, being productive. The work that I do as it relates to employers and organizations really began with my work, my 30 plus years of work in the nonprofit social sector. And in that space, I've been able to work in the community to help people resolve conflicts, but especially those who are disadvantaged socially. And a lot of the frameworks that we've used in helping people with upward mobility involves helping people to process what it looks like through to conquer the social economic disadvantages and diversities that happens. So I'm happy to be here and talk more about that and about what we're going to speak about today. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, both of you. And want to give you a little information about me. I am Dr. G. David Moss. I have a bachelor's degree in music education, a master's degree in counseling and human systems, both from Florida State University. I have a master's degree and a PhD from University of Notre Dame in counseling psychology. While I was at Notre Dame, I was able to receive the Distinguished Graduate Student Award by the Notre Dame Alumni Association. After my degree at Notre Dame, I worked 15 years there. I served them in the capacity of Special Assistant to the Vice President for Student Affairs, Senior Consultant to the Vice President for Student Affairs, and Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs. After I transitioned from Notre Dame, I started working for the South Bend Community School Corporation as the first and inaugural Director of African American Student and Parent Services. I have extensive experience at all levels of education, K through university, and you can imagine the kinds of conflict we solved and dealt with there. And I'm also a certified restorative practices facilitator, trainer, and educator. And of course, I'm the founder and lead consultant for Moss Light Consulting. And most recently, I achieved the rank of master trainer in the area of adverse childhood experiences, ACEs. So as you can see, we bring a wealth of experience to this conversation. And I am excited about what will be the outcome and what we can gain from each other. This is going to be an organic dialogue. This is not pre-scripted. We're going to go with it and flow with it, as many conflicts do. You don't always have a pre-described pattern in terms of the conflict you're going into. And so we're going to have that same opportunity here to delve into this topic in a way that's free-flowing and beneficial to everyone. In terms of thinking about conflict resolution, I think it's important to recognize that much of it depends on the context of that conflict. So, in psychology, there's a thing called reframing, how you reframe a problem so that it looks a little different. So let's say, for instance, that my wife is upset with me because I have left the toilet seat up. And all of a sudden, there's an issue there, right? Now, you may think that her view is a little skewed, that's not that big of a deal. But when you take into the context that we've been married for 30 years and we've been talking about this for at least 25 of them, all of a sudden that issue suddenly becomes reframed to be a little more accurate in terms of how we see it and how we perceive it. And so our goal today is to maybe help us kind of reframe how we see the issue of conflict resolution. In many ways, I view conflict resolution as a means of great opportunity. And there are examples of this from all across the globe. For instance, in the Western world, Albert Einstein says, "In the midst of every crisis lies great opportunity." In the Eastern world, there's a Chinese proverb that says, "Crisis is an opportunity riding on a dangerous wind." In the African world, there's a Nigerian proverb, which I first heard in the Black Panther movie by King T'Challa, and that says, "In a moment of crisis, the wise build bridges and the foolish build dams." And in the Bible world, Proverbs 27:17, "As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens the countenance of his friend." Recognizing that conflict is not just between enemies, but also conflict can happen with friends. And as the Bible world says, when iron sharpens iron, there may be some sparks. But once again, both benefit and both are sharpened. At this point, we're going to go through round one, and round two rather, and we're going to have each of our participants kind of share what their thoughts are around these views of conflict. And is it really true that conflict presents an opportunity? And we'll start again with Ms. Harris.
Thanks. Okay, so in the work that I do, primarily with leaders in schools, is around how do you handle conflict in a way that it produces an outcome that's beneficial for everyone. And so there are 4 ways that people, adults in particular, deal with conflict. They could be passive, and passive just means that they shut down, they pout, they go to their corners, and they do nothing. Another way is that people become aggressive, warlike. They're going to fight it out. They're going to, knuckle it out, and the one who's the strongest stands. And then there's the passive aggressive person, which is where most adults hang out a lot. That's where they hide the rock. They throw the rock and hide the hand. It's manipulative, and it sucks out the possibilities for resolutions. And then of course the last one is the one that we support, and that's the one called assertive, where your needs can be met, my needs can be met, and we can all work together to create something new, or at least to manage the tensions that are existing. Conflict and community are parts of the same coin. You cannot have community without having conflict. diverse ideas, diverse opinions, diverse needs, diverse things that need to be paid attention to. Those are things that we need to figure out, how do we manage these things? We don't want to push them down. We don't want to push them aside or say that they don't matter or that the loudest voice gets heard. We want to make sure that all voices can be heard and can be respected. And so I spent a lot of time teaching people how to engage in conversations using pausing and paraphrasing, where you seek to understand. Think about Covey's work about seeking to understand first and then to be understood. And so there's a lot of opportunities for us to listen intently to flush out what's underneath it, what's living under there. And then to ask the question of, if we pay attention to this, what are the positive things that could happen and come out as a result of paying attention to this issue? And then what are the negative things that could result if we don't pay attention to these issues? So it's a polarity. It's about and, it's about both. It's not about either or, it's about and, it's about both. And then recognizing that some conflicts cannot be resolved, and realizing that we are just about managing those tensions. How do we live together, work together, support one another in a way that is respectful, and in a way where your needs are met and my needs are met as well. So I spent a lot of time working through this with groups, also, and asking and teaching them how to ask questions in a way that's not interrogative, asking questions in a way where people don't feel put on the spot, asking questions in a way where the brain moves forward and the brain is open to ideas and the brain says, what else might it be? And then teaching people to use language in a way that reframes the conflict or reframes the issue and lives in ideas. A lot of times we find that people confuse um, conflict with relationships, and it becomes personal. That's affective conflict. That conflict does not need to be in our world at all. If we talk about ideas, if we think about what might the possibilities be, how can our community grow, what are ways that we can be better, what's our ultimate goal, and then how do we get there? What are those look fors, those listen fors that will say to us, we're reaching our goal, and if we're not reaching our goal, what are those things we might need to pay attention to? So it's the tentative language, it's open ended questions, it's using the voice in a way where people don't shut down and the brain doesn't want to fight you or run from you. The brain says, I'm open. I want to listen. I want to engage. I want to share. I want to put this idea on the table and allow the group members, the community members to massage it, to put things in, take things out, to ask questions about it, and not be intimidated and say, this is personal. We've got to get away from holding on to things and taking it as personal and saying, this is mine. I want the credit. You have to do it the way I say it needs to be done. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. So, conflict, again, is about opportunities. It's about moving the energy forward in the group. It's about helping people to engage in a way that is leading for a win-win for all the people there that are involved. So I live there. That's a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Mr. King.
Yeah. When I think about conflict resolution as an opportunity, I think one of the opportunities that conflict gives us is the opportunity to look at ourselves. I think a lot about, and in the work that I do, is I really deal with what is the cause of conflict. And everyone have a story, and that story is informing the conflict. Is informing the discontent. It's informing whether there are misconceptions. It puts people on various sides of an issue, and so story, is very important. in the work that I've done, a lot of the story that we talk about has to do with social economic diversity between classes. Each of those classes have their own story, their own value systems, their own hidden rules that speak to them, that they hold on dear. The problem is oftentimes is we, depending what perspective we're coming from, we assume that everyone's story is similar. We assume that everyone's value are the same, or they should be. It is. Uh, I think about when I was growing up. You hear the term. If you left the door, open. Were you raised? Were you raised in a barn? Why are you leaving the door open? And but what if I was raised in a barn? That would have been totally normal, maybe for me. Just using that as an example. Um, and so diving into these different stories and appreciating those stories, like Erica Harris has just mentioned about listening and being able to put ourselves in those positions to not only understand our own stories, our own values, where they come from, why do I feel this way, why do I have this angst, right? But also being able to have the mindset and uh, the posture to be able to then listen to others and appreciate other stories without judgment. It's not wrong or right. And I think once we get to that place, then we have set a threshold in which we can now move to resolution of the conflict. We can move to that respect. So I think when I think about conflict as an opportunity, and like Erica Harris has mentioned, that some conflicts are just not resolvable, right? And sometimes we have to admit that. But I think the greatest opportunity that I see in in meeting conflict head on is the ability to then think about me. Why am I such upset about this? Why do I have such an angst about this? What do I learn about myself? What traumas, what experiences, what environments did I come with? I mentioned earlier about the three different environments: the poverty, middle class, and wealth. They all have experiences, and they have environments that has shaped their beliefs and their understanding. And sometimes in the workplace, we see all three of those different socioeconomic classes within a workplace, and they don't understand each other. So there's where someone thinks someone is being aggressive. Well, that's just they're really passionate, and somebody else is, from another strain, have another value system, and we've often seen in the workplace that those value system conflict, and a lot of it is because they don't understand one another. So we spend time in helping people. Let's see ourselves, and then let's try to see others.
Mm. Great, great. And I think our audience can understand now why we are the team that we are, because there is a wonderful way that we kind of feed off each other's ideas, and we begin to really formulate our own based on what we've just heard. So I just really appreciate just the opportunity to craft this idea of conflict resolution with the two of you as we continue to figure out what are the best ways to handle these conflicts. And Erica, I really like the idea that you talked about, that no community is without conflict, right? Every community has, as a matter of fact, you can't, like you said, no community without conflict. And the benefit of that is that if you handle that conflict the right way, the community becomes stronger. It becomes more vibrant. It becomes able to meet the challenges that might be ahead in the future. And that is really a powerful thing to think about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so often, people have seen conflict as something to run away from and not run towards, and not see it as a place to explore ideas, to explore thinking. It has become a place of fighting. It's warlike. And maybe even the terminology that we use, conflict resolution, we're fighting. And maybe, so if we could think about another way to explore how we might talk about it, how we might rename it, so that people aren't afraid of it and are open to engagement. And so, um, anytime you put a name on something, it brings with it baggage, and people bring with it their stories. And so, it's like whenever I'm in an argument with someone, I always get beaten up, or this person, their ideas are the only ones that are acceptable, or we have to do it their way, or it's the highway, or all those kinds of things. And so, how do we then restructure it so that people can engage in it and say, you know what, I'm coming from this, and I'm realizing that not only did I get my needs met, but their needs were met as well. Or we're able to talk about this in a way where it's not confrontational, and it's not this person is wrong, this person is right. It's how might we be together in a way where we're thriving, where the community thrives and the community grows and the community develops and the community gets stronger, instead of having to tear down one group of people in order to uplift the other group of people.
Thank you. Thank you. And Leroy, I really appreciate your commitment to the context, right? To the story, to how those stories impact how someone views that conflict. Because in certain ways, a wealthy person may not view a conflict the same way as a person in poverty. And so I think that's really an amazing opportunity to help us look at ourselves. Like you said, look at ourselves, look inward, and talk a little bit more about how that process has worked for you in terms of your own work in conflict resolution.
Yeah, I want to add the fact that when Ms. Harris had mentioned about the fighting, we approach it, and oftentimes, that is the context, right? We say, okay, we're ready for a fight, and oftentimes that fight is very it is deep embedded into our experiences, right? Or what we feel even about ourselves. If we have fear, then we're going to fight. There's either we're going to fight, we're going to either run, fight, or freeze, right? And so I think that when we look at the internal initiative of what's causing this, what is the heat behind this conflict, it'll help us understand ourselves, as we approach it. One of the things, to give you an example also, as it relates to some of our work we've done in with employees and their employers, we can use an example, whereas oftentimes, and this is generalities, right? So it's not everyone, but sometimes because of your environment, if you're from a poverty environment, oftentimes the way you have to get things done is really you have to show up physically strong, right? If you don't show up with a certain amount of aggressiveness, to survive my environment, you can be ran over. So oftentimes this is a muscle that has been developed, right? This is how we deal with things. So now you're in a workplace, whereas workplace sentiments, we've often look at it that, and it is stated that oftentimes they are the workplace is a place where middle class sensibilities are more valued, and oftentimes the way they handle power and conflict is through institutions and through the systems, right? We have these agreements, we have these different things. So in the workplace, you have one side of the aisle saying, well, this is how our system works. If there's a conflict, you go to HR. And then if HR can't handle it, or you go to your supervisor, then if the supervisor don't handle it, you go to your HR. And if HR don't handle it, then you put in a 2 weeks notice and you quit, right? So that's the system of the workplace, right? And it's in accordance with middle class values. This is how we operate. Well, you can't use that system oftentimes in a poverty environment, right? Because the systems is different. It's like, well, either we're going to fight, we're going to throw up, the fist, or we're going to aggressively address this. So now you're in the workplace and you have someone who's coming from a poverty environment, and that's how they've handled conflict, versus someone who has a different way of handling conflict, which in itself creates conflict. So there's misunderstanding. So the employer is saying, well, they're being aggressive, they're insubordinate, and so we need to fire them, right? And then the person, the employee, is looking at the employer saying, see, they never did like us anyway. The man is against us, and it's all set up, system, because of these different understandings of what is really happening. So in reality, the middle class employer, that's not what their intention is. And the same way with the person who is coming from poverty, they're just trying to protect their state. It's not that they can't be a good employee, right? It's not that they're being subordinate. This is how they handle conflict, right? So, and typically when somebody's coming from a poverty environment, if they're going to quit, they're not going to wait till 2 weeks. They're going to leave right now.
Turn over some desk.
Right. And they're going to probably have a few choice words for you. So you're going to understand how they feel
Yes.
about the situation. So those are the, in my environment, that's how we really help people see themselves and to be able to see others, that, it's really about, it's kind of understanding the language. It's like people are from different planets or different countries, and it's learning each other's language.
Yeah. Great.
So that we can arrive at understanding.
Great. Thank you so much, Leroy. So now let's move on to ways that we might think about, well, how do you develop a conflict resolution strategy? And of course, Ms. Harris, I'm going to try to change that dialogue, change that terminology to maybe make it a little more free flowing. But for right now, we're going to stick with conflict resolution.
Okay.
And the thing that I found most compelling, there are many different strategies that you can take a look at all online. And the thing that I find most compelling about a resolution strategy is the idea that they're going to balance two factors. And those two factors are going to be relationship and goal. And those are the two balancing factors that determine how you're going to resolve that particular strategy, that particular conflict. So here are the five that I found compelling. The first one is avoiding. And with that, the importance of the relationship and the importance of the goal are both very low, very, very low. My wife and I took an Uber to the airport, and on the way to the airport, the Uber driver basically played some music that was not necessarily R-rated, but on the X-rated version. And so we were a little taken back by that. But instead of bringing that, because we had no relationship with that person, and because the goal was getting to the airport and it was not necessarily having a comfortable ride, we decided to just avoid that conflict altogether. So avoiding. And I think, according to Ms. Harris, that might be in the passive area in terms of how people look at conflict. The second one is compromising. That is where the importance of both the relationship and the goal is moderate. So you forfeit some of the needs to reach agreement. So each of you forfeit some of those needs. Neither party achieves their full goal, and it requires sacrifice to reach a mutually beneficial resolution. And I think, with Ms. Harris's terminology, that might be in the passive aggressive.
The assertive. The assertive.
That would be, how would that be assertive?
Assertive, because it's a win-win. It's a win-win. Passive aggressive things happen where people are sarcastic and they go behind your back and they say yes, but then they go behind your back and do something else. Yeah.
Okay, got it. The third, so we have avoiding, we have compromising, then we have competing. That's where the importance of the goal is high, but the relationship is low. For example, in situations where you may feel unsafe, reaching safety is more critical than your relationship with those around you. Right? And so a common joke told by comedians about two guys walking in the forest that run into a bear. And the thing becomes, I don't have to outrun the bear. I have to outrun you, right? So that is kind of the ultimate idea of competing.
Mhm.
And then, and I think, Ms. Harris, that would be also kind of the aggressive, right, for you,
Mhm.
right? The
Yeah,
aggressive, yeah,
yeah,
being really competitive.
yeah.
Um,
I think whenever you, like as you're saying, Dr. D, it's about relationships and it's about goals. And then how do we get there? So
yeah,
asking the question of what are some of your hopes around this goal? What are some of your hopes for your relationships? What are some of the hopes for the relationship itself, and what are some things that you are willing to do and some things that you're willing to give up? And so you can marry those things where they support each other and where everyone comes out saying, you know what, this works for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So the fourth conflict strategy, resolution strategy, is accommodating. And that is where the importance of a relationship is high, but the
Mm-hmm.
importance of the goal is low. And so you acquiesce to the other party's needs, especially when you don't have a strong opinion on the matter. This keeps the peace, but recognize that while keeping the peace, it can also stifle innovation and
Mm-hmm.
stifle creative problem
Mm-hmm.
solving,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and then the fifth would be collaborating. And that's where the importance of both is high. And to me, that's where we need to live in terms of how we do conflict resolution. This is viewed as the win-win strategy, with both relationship and goal being very important. And both parties, we all work together to find an outcome that meets all the needs of those involved, right?
Yes.
So we have those five: avoiding, compromising, competing, accommodating, and collaborating. And so with this round, I'd like to have our team talk about, maybe give an example of a conflict they've gone through, and talk about how their take on conflict resolution helped them formulate and frame that particular conflict. And we'll start with Ms. Harris.
Of course you do, right? I'm feeling picked on.
We have to resolve this conflict.
um, as I stated before, there are techniques and strategies and tools that can be used to surface those hidden agendas, and that can also be used to allow people to tell their stories and allow people to say what their goals might be. And so, as I alluded to before, the idea about asking about hopes and fears. So, what are some hopes you have for this relationship? What are some hopes you have for this intended goal that we're focused on? And then asking, you want to do this where people pull inward because when you're thinking about psychological safety, you want to make sure that people have the opportunity to go inward first and maybe talk to maybe one or two people. If you ask people to just shout it out or whatever, those people who are not afraid, who want to have things done their way, they're going to speak up. They're going to speak out. They're going to be loud. They're going to say whatever. And so you start by first asking people to think about it inwardly and maybe just writing a note. These are some things I'm hoping for. These are some things I have fears about and wonderings about. And it becomes a private place. And then they can speak to a person next to them or maybe in a small group, because again, it's about creating psychological safety. And we don't want people to run. We don't want people to freeze. And we definitely don't want people to fight. And so we've got to set that environment so that people can engage. And so I did this with a group that I was working with. They were trying to figure out how could they become not only the coaches and the consultants, but also become part of the marketing system in the work that they were doing, because they're now employed. We need you to market this. We don't just need you to do the job. We need you to market this. And so how do you bring those two things together? And so it became, so what am I hoping for? And what am I fearful about, in that you're asking me to do something that's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, and maybe I'm quiet, or maybe I'm shy, or maybe I just feel like this is an HR problem. This is not a an executive problem. This is not a coach consultant problem. And so working through that with them, and then having them to share and put them up there allowed me, to post them on the wall or to post them out loud, allowed me the opportunity as a facilitator to begin to talk with them and begin to guide them as they were thinking about the process and thinking about, okay. And then at the end, to come back to that and say, so what are some fears that were alleviated? What were some hopes that you now see potential for? Because you do want to then say, what are some of the strengths that we have that will allow us to reach this goal, and what are some things that might challenge us in reaching this goal, and then following it up with, so what evidence will we collect? What evidence will we know that we're getting to this place where we're building relationships, where we are creating places where people feel safe enough to say and to think out loud and to be thinking partners together? And what are some things that we're looking at that are saying that we're getting to the goal of whatever the goal might be? And so it's a dance. You're going back and forth, and you're making sure that you are including all the voices, that it's not just the person who's the loudest, the person who's the most vocal, the person who's in charge. It becomes a group, a community effort, and not necessarily one person saying, we're going to do it this way, you're going to like it, or you're going to quit, or you're going to get fired. Because what we tend to do is we tend to blame. When people don't come along with us, we blame them and we say they're just not a good fit for this work, or they're not a good fit for this job, or they're not a good fit for this community. And so we need to oust them. We need to help them to find a new place to live or to work or to be. So it's a combination of things. It's not a quick fix. And I think we've got to get past this place of thinking that we're one and done. This is continuous. This is every day. This is every moment. This is every chance we get. And so when you have people who are coming from a place where they've had to fight in order to survive, they now say, oh, you know what? I can use these other skills. I can use these things and still get my needs met. I don't have to be afraid to be in this room. And the people who are more docile, who are more inward, will say, I don't have to be afraid anymore. I can speak. I can say what I'm thinking and not feel like I'm stupid, or that I'm less than, or that what I have to say isn't worth it. So I've used hopes and fears. I've used quite a few things when working with groups. Going with the desired state is another place where people can say, this is what we desire. We want these things. We want our company to look like this. We want to know that these things are happening. And once you've got your desired state there, then you can start asking the questions of, so how do we get there? What are some things we need to pay attention to? What are some things we need to let go of? I could go on and on. I'll stop.
I think I'm going to give you an amen right there.
Me too. Amen.
Excellent. Mr. King.
Yeah, boy, I love everything that Ms. Harris was stating. You know, I could just do the avoidance thing and just say ditto. And we can go on to next. It was great. I want to make a couple points. Well, first of all, you know, I love this, the balancing of the relationship and goal, the idea. When I look at those 5 things, the avoiding, compromising, competing, accommodating, collaborating, I see that as a spectrum, really, right? It is a you know, there are phases, and I think we all oscillate, you know, between all of these things. You know, I think the first maybe even 3 or so are probably more of our default, and the more we move closer to 5, to collaborating, it takes really some skills. It takes some intentionality, to get there. I love the idea of the asking people, what do they want, right? My kids, when they were my adult children now, when they were kids, they had a favorite song, and it was called Me. And It was me, everything, right? And I think some of you may be familiar with that song. Um, but in this case, it's not. I mean, I think it is appropriate to ask, what is it that you want, right? And sometimes you have to walk people through that process because sometimes they don't realize what it is that they want. Because sometimes their want is coming out of maybe those fears, those other expectations that's being manipulated by things they really don't even understand. So I asked them that one, and it's kind of similar to what Ms. Harris was saying. You really got to dig into what does that really look like. I like so you may say tell someone or ask someone, what do you want? They say, I want pizza, right? Because they're hungry. Well, you ask them, well, what do you really want? Why do you want pizza? You keep asking that why. Why do you want pizza? Well, because I'm hungry. Well, what is it that you really want? Well, I really want to be in a place where hunger is not an issue anymore for me, right? So I think for every conflict, there is the low hanging fruit that we kind of default to. But there's some deeper things that we need to really arise to. And I think once we do that, it takes us away from that pitting against each other to, hey, we really all want this.
I just want to applaud you. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yes, to the root.
Yeah. It's so I think I remember I was in a situation and I was a director of a local community center, and we had volunteers who were leading various programs and people leading various programs, and this one lady who was very passionate about her program, and with that passion, she was very protective. So some things weren't moving, some things had happened, and so she bum rushed me, so to speak, and remind me of some words that I had not heard in a while. And this nice Christian lady, and she made herself very, you can tell she was very upset. Well, I had to there's a couple of things because I was having some feelings myself, right? Because, how dare you come to me like this? But I had to stop and pause, and I had to ask two questions. The first question was, what do I want in this? And then the second question, what is it that she really wants, right? And it was at that point we were able to de-escalate and really get to some solutions, right? She was really agitated. There's a whole idea about the Karman triangle or the victim triangle that they call, and there's in that triangle there's the victim, there's the rescuer, and there's the persecutor, and she was definitely the persecutor in this space, and she's also a woman who is a business owner as well, and the program that she was monitoring and still is to this day leading, was mainly for women, right? To empower women. And she really, I understood her story that she had it tough being a woman business owner, and she had to protect herself. And she has been in a position where she was the victim and decided she wasn't going to be the victim any longer, right? So I became the outlash of that at that moment. But understanding that story really helped us in getting to what do we really want, and we really wanted the same thing, and we were able to resolve that conflict and start making steps toward some solutions. So I think we. You're right on, Ms. Harris, about asking those, what do you desire? What do you want, and start creating those baby steps to get there, and then you're able to measure, are we getting there? And the thing about one of the things when we set those goals and we see that we're making those baby steps, it really strengthens and empowers people, and people's hope turn from a fear more hope and that we can do this and more empowerment.
But doesn't that take a lot of courage, right? It takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence about the future that you're able to put your needs in a position where you're going to ask that question before you try to take care of what you need, right?
Yeah.
I just think it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Humility.
Yep.
And, and sometimes we have we've been taught that to be a leader, you have to be strong and stout and there's no vulnerability you should be showing, but I think if a true leader actually does show vulnerability, right?
Yep. Great. This conversation reminds me of a conflict that I experienced several years ago. I do some work in Chicago for a local charter school, and they brought me in because there was a problem. There was a conflict between the majority white teachers and the majority Hispanic students. And they felt like this was kind of a diversity issue and was more related to cultural background versus kind of what's happening in the classroom. And so I went in and began to take a look at this conflict. And lo and behold, asking those questions, asking those important questions, I really found out that the issue wasn't between the Hispanic students and the white teachers. The issue was between the teachers and the teachers, that there was no trust in the environment, that there was this idea of competition, competing, and they were working for their own good. And they felt as though if a teacher provided equity for a student, that teacher was playing favorites and doing something that would kind of unnecessarily give that student an advantage versus being in the best interest for that student. And so through the process of restorative justice circles, we were able to get to the root of that and begin to talk about, well, what would it take? What do we need to have trust in this environment? And began to cultivate an environment where teachers trusted each other and they trusted that everyone was working in the best interest of the student. Ms. Harris, you know about this idea of assume positive intent, right? Mm-hmm. And so assuming that every teacher has a positive perspective on what to do for the student and not be in this competitive mode. And eventually we're able to resolve that issue. Now it's not perfect, right? Because issues, like you said, there's always conflict in any community, but now they have a vehicle, this idea of restorative justice circles, where they can dialogue about those issues. They can talk about the context of these different situations and come up with a situation that really makes sense for them in terms of being a staff that is really for the best interest of the student. So at this point, let's go around again and see if we have any comments about what was just shared. And this time, Ms. Harris, I am not going to start with you. I am going to start with Mr. King this time. So any comments about, our what we just shared, Mr. King?
Yeah. Man, this is the one time I wish you had started with Miss Harris. This has been great. One of the things that I think we've all mentioned, right, is conflict resolution is a continuous thing that we always have to deal with, and it takes time. Time is the element that you have to have with conflict. It's not going to be a day. It's not going to be a week. It's over time. And with the hopes of cultivating environments that, like Ms. Harris was mentioning about the psychological safety, right? Creating environments where people feel safe to communicate, to share. All of that takes time to create those atmospheres and those spaces where that can happen. And it's going to take consistency. It can't be a one and done it, or we did it this week and now next month we're going to do it. It has to be a continuous strategy, attempt at getting at this. But one of the things that I thought of is that there has to be a time commitment to this, to conflict resolution.
Great. Ms. Harris?
I'm going to piggyback off of Mr. King. And just, think about that word time, time, consistency, sticking with it, setting that intention. We're going to work together. We're going to learn how to work together. We're going to be willing to listen. We're going to be willing to ask questions. We're going to be willing to dig down into the why. Why am I feeling this way? Why is this important? What are some reasons that paying attention to this would really get us to where we need to be? And what do I have to let go of? Asking the question of, who do I have to be in order to help us reach this place? Who do we have to be as a community if we're going to reach this place of our goals and our relationships? And so I'm going to live in time. I'm going to live in consistency. I'm going to live in commitment. I'm going to live in the why. We're just digging down deep. What is the why? Why are we doing this, and why are we doing this way? So asking that question.
Yeah.
And I'm going to piggyback on you, Ms. Harris, because I think one of the things that you've taught me over the years that we've worked together is the importance of language, the importance of how you phrase things, the importance of the words you use. I remember when you made a comment once about, don't say in your note, anybody got any questions? you say, what questions might you have, right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And just how that adds a different take, a different nuance.
Yes, it brings
of inviting people into the conversation, right?
Yes.
So I think the language we use in conflict resolution is so important, and to stay away from hostile language, stay away from aggressive language, to really be engaging and be able to invite people into this conversation that really is about relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Great.
One of the things that that sparked my mind when you even mentioned about language, and how not to where we avoid aggressive language. Another also thing to look at is that people come with language also based on their experience, and so we have to not assume that they're being aggressive when they're speaking a certain way or have said certain things, and I think that has been at the core of a lot of conflict, is that has created misunderstanding, is that a language, for one, phrasing something or speaking in a certain tone doesn't, in another community may have a different a different take on what that is, and think they're being disrespected when that's not really happening. So it causes us, when we don't do that appropriately, it causes us to focus on the wrong thing, right? We focus on, you said this or that said that, instead of, okay, what do we really want, right? So part of that is, understanding that we have language is, and understanding those differences, is confront that from the beginning. Here's how I would say this. This is what this means. It don't mean that. What languages that we've used that have offended you, and how we've said it, and let them tell you what that is. So you have that conversation around language, about what can we bring to the table that will aid us in this conflict resolution.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
And so, okay, Ms. Harris, I see you want to say something very quickly. Okay.
So real quick. So here's a piece. So what's important to you is, and then they will say what's important to them. What's important for you about this is, and they will say, yeah, this is important to me about da da da, because they're wanting you to understand. And so you're looking for, how do I engage in a way that promotes understanding, that engages people in a way in which they will come back and clarify. So let's clarify what you're thinking. So what's important to you? What are some reasons that this is important to you? And then they can say, it's important to me because of this, and this. It doesn't matter about the tone that they use. It doesn't matter about the language that they use. It's about getting to the root. It's about getting to that understanding so that you can move forward. So thank you.
Very good. Hey, we have come to the end of this incredible dialogue. I am so excited we had this conversation.
Yes.
And so I'd like to give each of you kind of an opportunity to leave one nugget, okay? Just leave a nugget that you want our audience to take away from this conversation, just one nugget. And Ms. Harris, you're up again. You know it's coming to you. So one nugget, you take the takeaways.
There is hope.
Amen. Mr. King?
Diddle.
All right, Mr. Avoidant.
But yeah, and yeah, I think that's there's hope. Yeah, there is.
Agreed.
I can't beat that one. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Thank you, Mr. King, for just being a part of this incredible conversation. I want to have some final thoughts myself, just talking about the restorative process, how important that is in terms of trying to create this conflict resolution strategy. We went through the restorative process for this dialogue. And you will notice that we were very careful to give each one a voice. We're very careful to go in order and in turn. We're careful to give everyone an opportunity to say what they needed to say. That's the restorative practice, that we all have equal power. We all have the ability to contribute to the solution in the conversation, and we're going to give everyone that opportunity. Let's go to the outcomes. We talk about these programs and these workshops, and what were some of the outcomes we were hoping for? And so one was that our audience would understand that conflict brings opportunity, and we think we covered that. We wanted you to be exposed to conflict resolution and peace-building strategies, and we talked about that. We wanted you to see the value of community in building peace, and I think that was eloquently phrased by Ms. Harris. That without conflict, there can be no community without conflict. So that means the community is involved in that restorative process. We need to recognize that peace goes beyond the absence of conflict. It must be intentionally cultivated. And I think that was very clearly talked about and illustrated in our conversation. And finally, I want to have our audience accept the challenge of Psalm 34:14. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace. Seek peace. Search for it. And then pursue it. Work to maintain it. Be intentional. Be intentional. We're so grateful for your time. Thank you for allowing us into your homes, into your offices, and allowing us to be a conduit of God's wisdom to you. We are so grateful. Thank you once again, Shiloh. We're looking forward to our great support of the Damona Enclave, the Damona people, as they continue to move towards better health, better understanding, and greater prosperity as they move forward in Israel.
Hi, I'm Bishop Tavis Grant. I'm the Executive Director of the Shiloh Institute. Today we want to share a bit more with you about our mission, our mandate, and our goals and objectives as it relates to developing global ethical leadership. And with me is our Deputy Director, Dr. Jonathan Joseph Brown.
Hello, thank you for joining us. Here at the Shiloh Institute, we are a global advocacy and leadership organization that is committed to the cultivation of global ethical leaders that will bring about change for good in the world. We believe that connecting with your leadership ability is also knowing your national, your ethnic, and your spiritual roots. We do that by connecting the diaspora with Africa and with Israel. And so we are so excited to go on this journey with you.
As of October 7th, the world will never be the same. It is like unto 9/11 here domestically in the United States. Seeing the terrorism, the raw human carnage that has occurred since October 7th in Israel. As we focus on Israel, the African diaspora, and then people of color globally, it is our cause and our mission to make human rights the right for everyone. And there are so many ways that you can join us. At the bottom of the screen, you see the hashtag Cease for Peace Now. A global initiative now to seize the opportunity to save more lives, to bring restoration, redemption, and reconciliation through this amazing element that we've been given. No matter your faith, no matter your ethnicity, no matter your culture, all of us believe that peace is best for all of humanity. And I personally would rather have peace on earth than a piece of the earth. You can go to ceaseforpeacenow.com and get our Cease for Peace toolkit and become a part of one of our global advocates and a part of our global alliance as we seek to expand peace around the world. Imagine, if you will, as we're dawning upon a new day across the globe, that men and women, children and families and communities are now embodying that teaching of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ to become peacemakers. You can do it, we can do it, and we can do it better together.